Higher. If you receive Social Security, there's one letter that can change your entire day in less than 10 seconds. It doesn't arrive with flashing warning signs. It doesn't come with a phone call. It simply shows up in your mailbox like every other piece of mail. But once you open it, higher. You read a sentence that many retirees never expect to see. You were overpaid. Then comes as another sentence. You owe Social Security money. For many people, that's the exact moment panic begins. Your heart starts racing. You immediately wonder, did I do something wrong? Higher. Are they going to stop my benefits? How can I possibly pay this back? Some retirees immediately start looking for their checkbook. Others call family members in tears. And some simply put the letter back into the envelope, hoping the problem will somehow disappear. Higher. Unfortunately, that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make, because this isn't the kind of letter that becomes less important if you ignore it. In fact, waiting too long can limit the options available to you. Today, I'm going to explain exactly what this letter means. Higher. Why thousands of retirees receive it every year, the biggest myths surrounding Social Security overpayments, and the first steps you should take before you pay a single dollar or assume Social Security is automatically correct. Because the goal isn't to panic. Higher. The goal is to understand exactly what's happening before you decide what to do next. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every week we explain Social Security and Medicare in plain English using reliable information. Higher. Helping retirees make informed decisions without confusing legal language or internet rumors. Now, let's start with the question almost everyone asks. Why would Social Security suddenly say I owe money? The answer surprises many people. Higher. An overpayment doesn't automatically mean someone committed fraud, it doesn't automatically mean someone lied, and it doesn't automatically mean Social Security is accusing you of doing something illegal. Higher. An overpayment simply means the agency believes you received more benefits than you were entitled to under the rules. But here's where things become complicated. That can happen for many different reasons. Higher. Sometimes a beneficiary goes back to work and their earnings affect their benefits. Sometimes information is reported late. Sometimes a life change, such as a change in income, marital status, or eligibility, is processed after benefits have already been paid. And in some cases, higher. The issue may involve an administrative correction or information that wasn't available when earlier payments were made. That's why every overpayment case is different. Now imagine this. You've been receiving the same monthly payment for years. Nothing seems unusual. Higher. Your budget is built around that amount. Your rent, your groceries, your prescriptions, everything is planned. Then one day, a letter arrives saying part of that money should never have been paid in the first place. That's incredibly stressful. Higher. But here's the mistake many retirees make. They assume the amount listed in the letter is the only thing that matters. It isn't. The reasons behind the overpayment matters just as much. Before thinking about repayment, higher. You need to understand why Social Security believes the overpayment happened. Read the notice carefully. Don't stop after the first page. Many retirees do exactly that. They see the amount they supposedly owe, they panic, and they never finish reading the rest of the notice. Higher. But the remaining pages often explain important details, including why Social Security believes the overpayment occurred, your available options, and important deadlines. Those details can completely change what you decide to do next. Here's another common mistake. Higher. Some people immediately search online and follow advice from strangers. One person says, ignore it. Another says, they can't collect the money. Someone else insists, just pay it and move on. The problem is, none of those answers is automatically correct. Higher. Every overpayment case depends on its own facts, your work history, your benefit record, your reporting history, and the information Social Security used to make its decision. That's why your own letter matters far more than someone else's story. Higher. Now here's something many retirees don't realize. Receiving an overpayment notice does not automatically mean your only option is to pay immediately. Depending on your circumstances, you may disagree with the decision. You may believe the amount is wrong. Higher. Or you may qualify to ask Social Security to waive recovery if you meet the legal requirements. But before you can decide which path makes sense, you need to understand one critical difference that almost nobody explains clearly. The difference between an appeal and a waiver. Higher. Most retirees think they're the same thing. They're not. And choosing the wrong one can delay your case and create even more frustration. Let's begin with the question that confuses almost everyone. What's the difference between an appeal and a waiver? At first, higher. They sound almost identical. Many retirees use the words interchangeably, but under Social Security rules, they're completely different. An appeal means you believe Social Security's decision is wrong. Maybe you don't believe you were overpaid. Higher. Maybe you believe the amount is incorrect. Or maybe you believe Social Security used the wrong information when calculating your benefits. An appeal is your way of saying, I don't agree with this decision. A waiver is something else entirely. With a waiver, higher, You're not necessarily arguing that the overpayment didn't happen. Instead, you're asking Social Security not to recover the money because you believe you were not at fault and repayment would create financial hardship or you otherwise meet the legal requirements. Higher. That single difference changes everything. Unfortunately, many retirees don't understand which option applies to their situation. They rush into the wrong process, weeks pass, sometimes months, and by the time they realize the mistake, they're forced to start over. Higher. That's why understanding your options before taking action is so important. Now here's another question. What happens if you simply ignore the letter? This is where many people get into trouble. Some retirees believe that if they don't respond, Social Security will eventually forget about it. Others assume the agency will automatically correct the problem. Neither assumption is something you should rely on. If you ignore the notice, Social Security may continue with its overpayment recovery process under its rules and timelines. That's why reading the notice carefully and responding appropriately is so important. Here's another mistake that happens every day. Someone receives the letter, looks only at the amount they supposedly owe, and never reads the explanation. But the explanation often tells you exactly what period the overpayment covers, what information Social Security used, and why the agency believes you were overpaid. Without understanding those details, you can't make an informed decision. Now imagine two retirees. Both receive the same overpayment notice. The first person panics. They immediately borrow money from family and send a payment to Social Security without asking a single question. The second person slows down, rides every page, reviews personal records, compares dates, collects documents, then contacts Social Security to understand exactly why the overpayment was issued. Which person is more likely to make the right decision? Almost always the second one. Because information reduces mistakes, panic creates them. Here's a simple checklist every retiree should follow after receiving an overpayment notice. Step 1. Ride every page of the notice, not just the first page. Every page. Step 2. Drop down 3 things. The amount Social Security says you owe, the time period involved, the reason Social Security says the overpayment happened. Step 3. Pay that information with your own records. Did something change during that period? Did you report that change? Do your records match the dates shown in the notice? Step 4. Gather supporting documents before contacting Social Security, benefit letters, pay records if relevant, tax information if applicable, previous correspondence, anything that helps explain your situation. Walking into a conversation prepared is much better than relying on memory alone. Here's something else many retirees overlook. Keep notes, jot down the date you called, who you spoke with if available, and what was discussed if your case requires follow-up. Those notes can become extremely valuable. Another common mistake is waiting until the deadline is almost over before taking action. When people feel overwhelmed, they often avoid dealing with stressful paperwork. That's understandable. But delaying your response can reduce the time available to understand your options and complete the appropriate process. Now let's review what we've learned so far. Receiving an overpayment notice does not automatically mean you've done something wrong. An appeal and a waiver are not the same thing. Reading the entire notice is essential, and making decisions based on facts, not fear, is the best way to protect yourself. But there's still one question we haven't answered. What should you actually do first after opening the letter? Should you call Social Security immediately? Should you contact your bank? Should you hire an attorney? Or should you do something else before any of those steps? That's exactly what we'll cover in the final part. Because the first 24 hours after receiving this letter are often the most important.